30. Welcome, everyone. Note that everybody is here. Thank you very much for that. And with the consent of the committee, I ask that the staff members join us around the table so we can all have a productive conversation. Order of business that the committee confirms the agenda for the meeting of August the 9th as presented. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Member Catherine, seconded by Member Chapman. Further discussion? All those in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. This evening we don't have any delegations. Next order of business, that the committee adopts the minutes of the Finance Committee meeting of June the 21st, 2023. Noting no errors or omissions. Can we have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Member Oslach, seconded by Member Van Ryn. Further discussion? Okay. All those in favor? The motion is carried. Okay, to receive a report, the report CAO 4123 2024 budget pressures and drivers be received as information. Mover or seconder? Moved by Member Van Ryn, or sorry, Rahi, sorry. You guys are gonna have to switch, you look too much of someone. And a seconder for that? Member DeRossi. Thank you. And who is giving that report?
Mr. Chair. Thank you. This first report is intended to really provide a high-level overview of the capital budget pressures for 2024 and the upcoming years. Very briefly, the town's progressed very well to get a better understanding of our future infrastructure deficit. Work on our asset management plan has resulted in the town replacing historical values for future construction with more accurate estimates of actual replacement cost. Facility condition assessments that the town has undertaken has also helped identify future costs that we didn't know, and also assigned accurate estimates to those projects. These efforts, along with a lot of additional scrubbing and review of the capital assets, has led the town to have much better information and metrics to base council decisions upon. Overall, we're well ahead of most municipalities in having a more detailed and accurate understanding of our future cost. The town is emerging from a prolonged period of relatively stagnant growth. This growth, the new growth that we have, has cost attached to it. And we're seeing the town draw upon our reserves very quickly, so we're drawing down our reserves. Projects like the water tower, lagoon optimization, SCADA improvements, and the new AIM industrial park all represent huge new investments for the community to support growth. We're fortunate to be well along in these projects when the new Volkswagen plant was announced, as we now have a considerable strategic advantage over other area municipalities. As a small municipality, we have limited financial resources, though. So we're now in a period where we're expending well above what is maintainable related to capital works, and we're going to either become reliant upon grant funding, debt issuance, or project deferrals. So that's kind of the austerity that's approaching us as a result of all the good work we're doing. This is a common theme you're going to hear a lot from other municipalities coming up. But the many other municipalities are in significantly worse position than Aylmer because they don't have the potential for growth that we have, and they haven't made those substantial investments to date. So while we're entering a period of fiscal restraint for capital projects, that period also is associated with historic levels of investment and growth in the local economy for Aylmer. I should mention that growth isn't just an item related to available funds. I think Aylmer has really established itself as a community that supports economic activity, growth, and development. I think we can go toe-to-toe with any municipality in the province now on our quick timelines and response timelines and our hands-on approach. The word's already spread to developers and businesses, and they want to come work with Aylmer. And so this is also occurring at a time when a lot of other municipalities are seeing high attrition rates for these positions and services, delays in planning, and additional pressures due to the new housing demands and targets set by the province. So as a result, I think council deserves a lot of kudos for being so forward-thinking and business-friendly on these aspects, because the strategic work that's been done now will start paying for what we need to do in the future. And with that, I'll pass it off to our treasurer for further comments.
Thanks, Andy. Through you, Mr. Chair. The focus of the next reports basically are to do with, the fact that we are drawing down our reserves. So we are doing a substantial investment with the water tower, with the lagoon optimization. We're looking at shave and paves now instead of just putting that, surface treatment on the roads and that kind of thing. So I just want council to consider, not pulling back those contributions from reserves. We have underfunded the Parks Reserve historically. We have underfunded asset management historically as a means to hit those tax rate pressures. So that's pretty much the comment that I have regarding this report.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? Member Rossage?
To Andy. Reconstruction Elk.
Yeah, so certainly Elk Street was a capital project that we had to delay, defer because of the financial impacts of it that we heard in during the pandemic. The market prices for that went well up. And but now I believe it's anticipating the budget for 2025. So we're on track and we're able to get that done. But that is a huge capital investment, and that's going to be one of the bigger capital projects that we undertake this term.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the committee? All right, seeing none, we have a mover and a seconder to receive the report as information. We'll call that for a vote then. All those in favor of receiving? And the motion is carried. Moving on. Report CAO 4223 respecting taxation drivers be received for information. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Member Van Ray and seconded by Member Chapman. And Andy, are you leading that one?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report is part of an ongoing multi-year effort of staff to highlight the relative tax and mill rate pressures impacting residents. So it's more of a kind of an education report that we've been trying to evaluate and provide some analysis upon this. This is the most detailed analysis done to date, specifically upon the upper tier taxation pressures on Aylmer. The simplest way to kind of explain this report for the viewing public is that with Elgin County's relatively small population, we really see a need for the county to focus upon affordability and providing all services at what we would consider a bronze or silver level. Residents can understand that sort of concept that you're trying to live within your means, and the county, because of their small population, does have limited means. And it's a predominantly rural population, so you cannot just continue to expend regardless. This is not the first time staff have been before council outlining that residents pay between 10 to 15% more a year in upper year taxation for service levels that are significantly less than other county systems. In the past, the county has taken the position that mill rates are not a factor in where businesses locate. This has not been reviewed in many years and is out of step with the common approach utilized in municipalities. So when a large factory or business is considering coming to our municipality rather than, say, St. Thomas, certainly St. Thomas has significantly lower tax rates, and that's a competitiveness issue that they do look at. We want those things to be considered. In addition, Elgin County, hasn't utilized a lot of the information and reporting upon the performance in comparison to other municipalities to justify their expenditures in certain areas. So you have an instance, for instance, the county is underfunding childcare and affordable housing, yet has the highest spending per capita year over year for paved roads and long-term care. So I'd kind of describe that to the public as there's two very important areas, being affordable housing and childcare, where you're getting bronze level service. And then there's two other levels where it's above even platinum, maybe diamond level service for those. You're the highest in the province per capita. So that type of imbalance in funding compared to other municipalities is perhaps supportable if there's some kind of active decision-making at the county level to make a strategic ongoing investment in those areas. But that's not the rationale that we're hearing communicated to our citizens, that the investment in paved roads and long-term care is of that much importance that you should be paying that much more. So what we're seeing more is that it appears to be a continued use of historic over expenditures in these areas. And that's an issue that we need to continue to start to advocate upon. Locally, again, our residents are paying higher percentage of taxes to the county than should be required. So although we're doing all this work on tax affordability, and you can kind of see that our taxation levels, our operational tax is a very slow, gradual increase for a minor increase over the 10 years examined. That result won't have any huge lasting impact as long as that we're paying that 10 to 15% more. They're essentially taking a bigger piece of the pie that we should be able to put towards our own reserves and our own future capitals here, or providing us services to offset those costs. In terms of Elmer, there are some areas where we are higher than required. Most notable is the police service. There's a potential for the town to initiate a costing exercise that was paused in 2018. This would not be a short-term fix for the town of Elmer due to the transition cost and building of a new police detachment. So although this could be pursued, realistically, staff at this time believe that savings would be 8 to 10 years in achieving. So will not assist this term of council or the next term of council realistically. It's fairly well known that the OPP costs have been low year over year for municipalities. A big factor of that has been the chronic understaffing of OPP officers, which is a well-known challenge that they've been dealing with, is a lot of low staffing levels. And staffing represents around 80% of the OPP costs. So the challenge with switching to an OPP system now is we know and we're well aware that they haven't been able to put as many officers as they've promised communities on the road. And so if we switch to OPP, we'd not only be taking a switch from the current local service, we'd be accepting a potentially lower than agreed to level of service. So it really would behoove Elmer to wait to see how OPP performs in the future on reaching a stable status of their staffing levels before we ever consider going out to costing. The other pressure that Elmer really faces is the cost of administration, which is above average. Staff believe that this amount will come down as our population size grows. I think our opinion is that it exists because our population isn't big enough to fund the amount of services that we provide. So as we start getting this growth, we are hoping that number which is slightly high will come into line. So overall, when you look at Elmer over the last decade, operationally you see very stable and gradual increases in cost. This shows that a lot of effort's been spent to ensure that our budgeting has affordability in mind. It's a strong indicator that Elmer has trimmed the fat, and which is one of the reasons why we're focusing upon the levels of expenditures at the county. In terms of the next steps, it may be in the town's interest to form a committee to consider champion fair taxes approaches for Elmer within Elgin County. In addition, this committee may also desire to further pursue the payment in lieu issue, to which public has yet to have full transparent reporting on. Advocacy will likely be required with the county to advance the concept of austerity and expenditure reductions or to seek additional supports or investments for the town of Elmer, because we are a unique and growing community, and we're the only urban community in Elgin County. So when you consider something like paved roads, we aren't really getting the benefits out of those. Those are going to rural communities that have a very high level of road service, where that's not something that typically benefits Elmer. So there might be a need to say to Elgin County in a form of advocacy that we need a separate deal for Elmer. And with that, I'll try my best to answer any questions council might have.
Thanks, Andy. There was a lot of content in your presentation, for sure. Members of the committee, your thoughts? Member DeRossi?
Thank you, Chair. Andy, when you say high administrative costs, can you confirm what those costs are? Like when you say administrative, what are those, like wages?
Yeah, so those would be the cost of all the staff and I believe all the computers and everything. I believe we were somewhere around, I forget exactly what it, maybe $18 above average per capita. It wasn't a huge amount, but we were over capita for it.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, we have a report. It's been moved and seconded. Respecting taxation drivers to be received for information. All the motion to a vote. All those in favor of receiving the report? And the report is carried. Next item, the report CAO 4323 respecting fire communications reserve be received as information, and that the Finance Committee of the Town of Elmer direct staff to send correspondence to the municipalities of Bayham, Central Elgin, Dutton Dunwich, Malahide, South Old, and West Elgin, outlining Elmer's establishment of a reserve to fund our portion of anticipated cost associated with the required replacements of the fire paging and two-way communication equipment. A mover and a seconder for that report. Moved by Member Van Ray and seconded by Member Oslach. And the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to thank the fire chief for his work in advancing this issue with the area fire chiefs. In summary, the shared relationship around the procurement of fire communication infrastructure has been a significant benefit to all the participating communities. There's a future large capital investment required, so we're proposing to establish a reserve for this purpose and also send communications to the other participating municipalities to ensure this important capital cost is incorporated within their budget work going forward so that this partnership can continue. And Chief, I don't know if you have anything to add?
Thank you, Andy. Through the director, yeah, the other municipalities, we're all partners in this. They're aware of the study. We all paid equal parts in the study. So this is a good idea, just to remind everybody, this is what we were directed from the money we spent. You know, it's something that we all need to look at. It is quite an expense coming forward. So it's a great idea that everybody's on the same playing field, not just the town, that our partners are with us. So thanks, Andy.
Are there any questions of the committee? I have one question, if I may. How does this 10-year capital budget and setting it aside for reserves differ from a line entry in an annual budget?
Basically, we're identifying this as a specific reserve with a specific purpose. So it wouldn't go into a general asset management reserve. In council, I have a reserve update report to identify this reserve as a communications reserve for fire equipment. And when we get to the 10-year point, we would have the money available for the upgrades, at which time it would sit and wait for that upgrade. So nothing else would be able to be paid out of that If at 10 years they said, don't worry about it, we don't need your money, then council can repurpose that money for something else. So we would add that as an operational capital contribution to our budget this year because we don't have it currently, and it would come through the fire department on the operation side.
A follow-up to that, if the priorities changed over that period of time, can the funds be reallocated?
Yes. It would be in an unrestricted reserve, for lack of a better term. For council's purposes, it wouldn't be an obligatory, it's not a statutory requirement, but council would be able to direct those funds to go somewhere else.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. We have a mover and a seconder. And,
Oh, go ahead.
okay. Calling the report to a vote then. All those in favor of receiving the report? And the motion is carried. Report FIN 1623, respecting the 10-year capital budget be received as information, and that council acknowledge the proposed 10-year capital budget and as described work plan is presented, and that council direct staff to present the final 2024 capital budget for review and adoption at a future meeting. A mover and a seconder. Member Chapman, Member Rahi, sorry, and I apologize. And the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through you and to the members of the committee, the report you have in front of you this evening includes capital and discretionary projects for the consideration of the 2024 budget of $16.756 million, split between $4.956 million of new capital projects, and the 2020 and the remainder of the 2024 projects would be from carry forward from prior year. So to summarize, the new projects appearing on the list are related to urgent outcomes from the facilities condition assessment for structural floor upgrades and concrete walkways outside of Town Hall. The additional investment of the industrial park of $1.5 million, which we still need to quantify with our latest estimate from our vendor. And basically, we would outlay that cash until we could sell those lots as being serviceable. And the increase in the sidewalk program of $80,000 and the mill and pave program increase of $135,000. So any other minor adjustments will true up as we go forward to year end. I'll do the same thing as we did last year, where we're going to identify the carry forward projects, not necessarily requesting council to reapprove them, but just as an FYI, these are the amounts would be carried forward, will be highlighted in the next report. Council may notice that on the reserve graph, you're noticing the reserves quite high. Excuse me. As Andy mentioned, these will be drawn down in 2026 to 2027. Keep in mind that these reserves are made up of obligatory, restricted, and unrestricted, so council really only has about $3.2 million that are unrestricted, which would fall into asset management, parks, contingencies, and so forth. 4.1 of these are obligatory and are restricted for projects that qualify for certain development charges, OSIF, et cetera. And 3.1 are for water and wastewater to pay down the debt we've just incurred with the water tower and the optimization for the lagoons. So we can go through the details of the capital plan. If there's any questions on any projects, we have the team here to answer those.
Are there any questions? Member Jack,
So remember Jack's good too. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Not really a question, but a comment. And we've looked at a number of points about the future and about where we're going, and I commend staff for giving us all kinds of details about where taxation may be going and the pressures upon taxation and items dealing with the level of a county's spending and things of that nature. When we look at the capital budget, the 10-year capital budget, it is not written in stone. It's kind of a general look at what we're looking at for the future. So it's not like our regular budget, so we can change it. That's my understanding anyway. We could change that from year to year. What I'd like to see here is a couple of things added to the capital budget that are kind of out there. In fact, they were out there when I was campaigning, and those two items certainly have to deal with the community complex, which is the biggest item of discussion when I was campaigning. People wanted to make the community complex more inclusive and more of a community complex rather than just a building that dealt with one particular item. So I would like to see those kinds of things included in the capital budget for the next 10 years. And here I'm talking about a walking track within the community complex and an indoor swimming pool, which were the items that were discussed. So I'd like to, I don't know how we can deal with this in this particular resolution, but I would just like to see staff include those items in the 10-year capital budget so that we take a step towards looking at those at least in terms of what they cost, where they could be, what kinds of changes, if any. Either we kind of go down that path or we find out we can't really go down that path. So, but at least we need to begin kind of looking at that. So I don't know, Mr. Chair, how we would include my suggestion in this resolution. Should it be a separate resolution that we include those, or can we add it in terms of a consensus of a feeling here? Josh, can we just add that to the resolution, or do we need a separate resolution to do that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and two-member Cookit, it's the prerogative of the committee. I think, with the permission of the mover and seconder, we could certainly amend the motion, or we could make a separate one. It really is the prerogative of the committee for that request. But if they were to amend the motion as it stands, I would recommend adding a sentence on the last clause, just respecting that council direct staff to present the final 2024 capital budget. Perhaps we could include something generic with, along the lines of with noted additions or something.
Noting the additions of having a look at a walking track and an indoor pool. Right? So we're the.
And if it assists, Mr. Chair, I think the first step for the committee and then council certainly is for us to start to do some investigation to nail down cost. We wouldn't want to make a guess at what those things would cost in full now and put that in the 10-year budget. So it would likely be a project to do some class 4 estimate in 2024 of that nature.
Could you describe a Class 4 estimate?
Josh is probably better at it than myself or Terry.
Certainly, I'll start, and perhaps Terry can correct me if I'm mistaken on any of this. So we would be looking for a high-level estimate that gives us a general idea of what we should be budgeting. So the various classes of estimating these types of works would give us a different buffers. So whether or not we could be plus minus 20%, plus minus 50%. Really, it has to do with the accuracy of the financial forecasting that we're doing. The more specific the estimate, the more engineering works and sort of specificity that's going to be going into establishing it. So by doing a high-level estimate, especially if it's a future project, we probably would be in a position that we wouldn't need to expend a great deal of funds up front, but we would have a general idea of what these types of initiatives would cost us.
Member Oslach, you had a question?
Yes, I'm in favor of a new resolution to make the resolution cleaner.
Okay, that's one option. The rest of the committee, do you feel that is warranted, a separate resolution, or with the consent of the mover and the seconder, modification to the original motion? What's your pleasure?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd be okay with just adding it on to the current resolution. Plus, I also have a follow-up comment once we're finished with addressing that.
All right, okay. And I forget, who moved and seconded? Who was the seconder?
Member Chapman and Member Rahe.
Member Chapman? An amendment?
Amendment, yep.
Okay, and Rahe?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Are there any further questions? Member Rahe?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Just a rough guess, but like from somebody, with everything that is on the 2024 budget, what would have to be the increase to support everything that's there?
To include the pool project is?
Yeah, like just whatever is on everything for 2024, what would be the projected increase of taxes that we would have to? Would anybody know that yet?
Currently, the 2024 capital projects are either going to be funded from debt or reserves. I don't know how much a pool costs, but I wouldn't suggest doing that next year.
No, I mean everything that is already on here for 2024.
Yeah, nothing currently is being paid out of tax except for the $30,000 for the contribution for the communications reserve, which isn't really going to be expended next year. Nothing else has been identified as being paid from the tax levy in this budget. Historically, this council has chosen to pay for capital out of reserves. I've stayed with the same methodology, so I'm not rocking the boat.
Okay.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I believe to the chief, I think there was a report brought a few months ago to council about the potential need to look at budgeting for a new ladder truck. Is that something that we are still anticipating to see a report or something that we'll be looking at in the budget?
Chief?
Thank you. Through the chairman, we have, there was a report to council brought forward in May of this year that we would come up with kind of a roadmap plan designed to look at replacing that truck. As everybody knows in the room, that's a very expensive piece of equipment. I know the treasurer and the CAO have been busy right now, but I hope in the last quarter of the year we can sit down and look at the options that are available from replacement to rebuild. We pushed it down the calendar a little bit, which I'm comfortable with the repairs that we have done to it this year. But we definitely, as I did say in May, we will get some direction to council on that when I get an opportunity to meet with my team and with finance. We'll give another report to council on what we find. Thank you for the question.
Any further questions? Yes.
What is the procedure you want to follow through with for tonight's discussion? Like, are you looking for us to go through that 10-year capital budget and discuss things, or for time purposes, are we just acknowledging it tonight and then bringing it up again for discussion in future?
Andy or Heather?
Certainly, I mean, the final capital budget will be presented at the last meeting of October, so if there's anything that the committee requires further work from staff, from staff, I think the sooner staff know about it, the more work we can put into it and the better summaries we can provide to any of your questions that arise today. So if you do want to go through it line by line, if that would be helpful to staff as well too.
I'll leave it up to the chair then. It's your direction. I've got questions, I can just deal with staff directly, or we can discuss them openly now. It's up to you.
The questions that you have, they may be applicable to all of the members of the committee. Your choice. They're your questions.
Go line by line, or like, we can go probably section by section would probably be best. And then if anyone else has any questions, I'm sure nobody else does, but we can still, if anyone else wants to, we can.
Go ahead.
Okay, so for the first section, for operations, general, transportation, and roads, the vehicle replacement for 2025 for $75,000. What vehicle is that we're replacing?
Okay, so these, anything beyond 2024 is basically from the asset management plan. So for this one, we put a placeholder in for a vehicle, more than likely it's a parks truck, a public works truck, coming up for replacement. So we're only requesting council to consider the 2024 projects as being firm for presentation. Anything beyond that would be a placeholder from asset management, a placeholder from a facilities condition assessment, an estimate from Terry's math for roads or identifiable roads that need to be upgraded based on some sort of inspection. But we're only asking for 2024 to be considered to be firm.
So limit my questions to 2024.
If you can, unless,
Yeah, no, I
unless you
can.
see a road that, you know, you don't, you want to discuss that's coming up, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Can I keep going?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I've skipped forward to, I believe it's the parks, it's regarding the pool. So there is a projected cost of 10,000 for a pool condition assessment for 2024, and then there's several other expenses for 2025 and 2026. And my only issue with that is if we're even discussing the possibility of a pool, like an indoor pool, or, like, to me, the asset is depreciating, so how much money are we gonna put into this asset that is basically going to be essentially wasted if the long-term goal is to put in an indoor pool? So, I don't know if other members feel the same way, or if it's not a concern to them.
Member Chapman?
Through you, Chair, an indoor pool is a future project. The outdoor pool is well utilized now, and I don't think that it's a waste of investment. We don't have enough for our children as it is, so taking away that pool would be a big detriment to our community. The only thing I have a question about this is $10,000 for an assessment of the pool? That just seems like a lot of money for an assessment for a pool. So is that just because we have no idea how much it would cost and you just want to take care of it? That's what I assumed it was.
If I may, so this came up when we were opening the pool, so Parks and Rec's team leader called Rob and said, you know, you need to look at this concrete is crumbling. We've historically just been patching it, whatever. There's a couple issues that we want a vendor to come in and look at. So we'd like to assess the condition. It may be done by somebody internally, it may not be, depending on the scope of the project. But Rob wanted to put this on the list as a placeholder so that council was aware that this did come up, and we were not really aware of it. So we wanted to make sure that we talked about it during this discussion.
It would also be reasonable to assume that if an internal assessment or even an external one based on the supplier of that particular project, there may or may not be a charge to perform such assessment. Yeah.
Just to follow up with that one then, I know it's a future investment and something that we're looking for the future, but is the idea, or is it common that we would keep the outdoor pool if we did have an indoor pool? Like, we would have both facilities? Or if we ever had an indoor pool, would that be terminated like the outdoor pool? Would we keep it? Would we keep both? I think I'm kind of asking staff about that. Like, is that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think we'll have to wait to see. I mean, I know the Parks and Recreation Master Plan that comes forward in September speaks to both. It provides details on what size of population we should have for both an indoor and outdoor pool, so I think that will help council have some more information to decide. The one challenge that we have here is, you know, we had council defer some of the cost for painting and light improvements at the pool last year so that we have some money in the reserve, but certainly there was a lot of municipalities, I don't know if it was 4 or 5 across the province this year that were shutting down outdoor pools, so and never going to reopen them again, because the repair costs for these pools could be quite substantial, and we've been putting cement and spackle on it for a good many number of years, so I hate to say it, but there could be some relatively shocking news once we get that facility condition assessment next spring, and we're of a similar mind that we do want to keep that pool up and operating, but if we get a report in April, that doesn't give us, that's prime time for pool people, so it's going to be kind of tough, but we just want to make sure that we're on top of that file.
Do you have any other thoughts?
No, not about the pool. I can move on if you'd like.
All right.
The EECC ancillary flooring, what is that exactly?
Okay, Sorry to stop you. So with the EECC and the police, in the report, we kind of tabled those because those specifically need to be presented to two boards. So if you can hold those questions until, because we just received actually the EECC condition assessment, which we want to pull those numbers into here for that board, and we received it too late for me to update that. But I think, it's good that we meet with the boards before we talk about those specifically, if that's okay.
And that would be appropriate.
I can keep going. This one, it's been on this report before, or this budget, and I've mentioned it to various staff and various other council members. Water bottle filling station at the town hall. It's put in as $0 for 2025. There was an expense originally. So if it's $0, can we just take it out of this capital budget? Like, I don't know why it's still in here at $0.
I can answer that. We leave these projects in here so that you can tell what was in there last year, so that you're not wondering where your project went, if that had been your project that you wanted, and I just took it off as staff and didn't notify the rest of council, that wouldn't be good.
Okay, so can we take it out? It's already put at $0. Can we just take it out?
Yeah,
for future
so,
capital budget
yep,
discussions?
I can take that line item out now. Yep.
Okay.
It was put in there for transparency.
Yes.
Correct.
But does anyone have any problem with taking it out, or do you guys want to keep a water bottle filling station at town hall?
The members of the committee have had an opportunity to see that there's no dollars being allocated to it, and the natural assumption is that it's coming out.
Just want to make sure nobody has validation for it that they want it, so.
No need.
Okay, records management system for $55,000. Can someone break down that expense, what exactly it is and for what?
So this is just a carry forward project from 2023. There is a public works position that we just filled that we're looking at possibly a module in our current asset management software to purchase, which would help public works with all sorts of, services and agreements and keeping track of the maintenance on those things. Also, the Laserfiche modules that we want to implement, that's part of the project still. We just got Michelle on board for full-time now, so I think we'll be able to expend those funds next year. I don't know if there's anything else Josh wants to add on that.
It's modernization funds as well, so those are part of grant funds to the municipality.
Yeah, it was grant funding that the municipality received that does have some restrictions on what types of projects we can expend it on, and records management and modernization through IT services is sort of the limited scope that we can expend those funds on.
And that project has been ongoing for several years.
And so is it projected to be like completed as of 2024, hence why there's no more cost association? Okay, perfect. Keep going.
Carry on, do you have a whole shopping list of things?
I'm just down to fire now. I think I'm almost done. I think I've got fire, and that's it, just fire. All right, Todd.
Through the chair?
The south side fire hall fence replacement, is that relatively new? I don't remember it on the capital budget last year.
Through the chair, that would go through the work, through Josh and his department, but that came out on our building assessment, I believe, if I'm correct by saying that, Josh. And our fence is falling down, and as a courtesy to our property and our neighbors, because we work in a residential neighborhood, so we try to work with our neighbors, as you are aware, as best we can, and the fence is getting a little bit unruly. So that is just like, again, another place marker in there of the assessment that we had done on the buildings and properties, identified as a project that should probably be done sooner than later.
So does that $10,000 basically replace the fence with the similar style, like a wood fence, or is that a chain link?
That would be the similar fence that's there. And I don't know that you'd do that for $10,000 anymore with the price of wood.
Well, that's why I was like, is that what it is, or what is it? So,
Yeah,
okay.
so it may be a decision, we have to do it in sections, and I can let Josh answer more directly to that if he wishes.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and just to answer that question, my understanding of the facility condition assessment is that they would be able to reuse some of the existing posts, so we would be replacing some of the panels for the most part. Tyler and I had the same thought, that it seemed low, but we're also, putting faith in the engineers that gave us that recommendation and the project scope that they had provided. So that's where that came from.
Thank you. Member Osledge?
Through you, the chair. So you're just going to replace the boards and upgrade the fence?
Through Mr. Chair, and any posts that are absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
Yes, yep.
You're not going to build a whole new fence?
Not for 10 grand.
Yeah, yeah.
Are there any further questions? And for the benefit, Member Cookett?
If I may, Mr. Chair, before we do the vote on this particular thing, I just wanted to mention a couple of things. The inclusion of a walking track and indoor pool on the 10-year capital report is a matter of timing mainly. It's a matter of getting it on the record that this is something that council may be looking at, a chance for people to discuss that. And in fact, there will be a town hall meeting on September the 25th at 6:30. And I expect a lot of people will be asking questions about that, many of which I'm sure I can't answer because we won't have costing, we won't have any of that kind of stuff until then. But I think it's important to begin the process right here, because one of the ways in which we're going to afford this is called grants, and grants need a kind of, a full report on the pool. I forget the exact term of what they need, but we need to be ready to apply for that kind of stuff down the road. So the sooner we begin it, the better. And you can always throw it off, the capital items for the next 10 years, the next time we discuss it. But I think it's important for staff to begin that now. Just thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, are there any further questions? Okay, Josh, for clarity, could you read the motion as amended, please?
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Chair. So this is moved by Member Chapman and seconded by Member Rahe, and the resolution reads that Report Finance 1623 respecting the 10-year capital budget be received as information, and that council acknowledge the proposed 10-year capital budget and described work plan as presented, and further, that council directs staff to present the 2024 capital budget for review and adoption with noted additions for high-level costing on additional items, being a walking track and an indoor swimming pool at the East Elliott Community Complex.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Calling the question to a vote then. All those in favor? And the motion is carried. Next item, the report FIN 17-23 respecting the asset management plan be received for information at the Finance Committee, and that this document be provided to council to approve the updated asset management plan for 2023. A mover and a seconder, please. Member Osledge, Member DeRosier, and the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you and to the members of the committee, Terry has done a lot of work on this asset management plan with respect to the current replacement values, which I'm very thankful for. So we've pulled through here in this update the 2022 actuals with the disposals, the additions. Terry's focused on the roads, sanitary, sewer, water, and we've created a better baseline asset management document for 2024, actually just in the nick of time, because the OSIF, the ministry wanted these numbers for OSIF. So I'm hopeful that the numbers that we put in will hopefully generate some sort of additional contribution from the ministry on that. So to get to this point, Chelsea helped out with the visuals in the document, updating all of the graphics. A lot of things have changed with regards to the current replacement values, which have skewed some of the numbers or changed some of the numbers, made better. So basically, the current replacement value costs are up to date in those areas for the most part. We still have to do the buildings. We're going to pull in the condition assessment numbers from the EECC, from the facilities condition assessment. We'll pull those in for 2024. We had to draw a line in the sand so that we were able to present this to council, or to the committee and then to council. some of the estimates that we've done in the recent water and wastewater studies and DC studies, we're realizing now we can use our current capital plan instead of relying on those consultant estimates. So when those things come back up, we're actually going to be able to use our asset management plan for these things, which we have never been able to historically. So I appreciate Terry's involvement in this, because I wouldn't have got to be able to present this to you tonight because of the work that he's put through. So some of the conditions that need to be done still are still from 2019. So we need to go out. The next step is update the remainder of the buildings, update the remainder of the condition assessments for all the roads, make sure that our risk assessments are current, and that will be what we focus on for 2024. So, you know, it's no surprise to anybody here that we have been underfunding our asset management plan. We now have a better number. We know we're probably only able to fund on a yearly basis about 30% of what we should be able to fund with the current infrastructure we have. So we are better off than a lot of these other municipalities. I just went to a clerks and treasurers conference with Josh, and we were pretty impressed with how far we are along. Some communities don't even have any reserves at all, so I feel good about that. But we definitely have some work to do on the reserves and the contribution to reserve side on this, which is why I'm presenting this to the committee tonight. And that's all I had.
Thanks, Heather. To the members of the committee, do you have any questions of the report at this time? Seeing none, we'll call the motion to a vote to receive the report. All those in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you. New business and inquiries. Seeing none, and that we do now adjourn at 5:21. Motion to adjourn. Member Chapman, Member Cookett. All those in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you.